Join me and Coco in the woods today, and we're going to have a chat about the divine feminine and the dark goddess and gender, and discussing a pre-gendered divine and how we can make our occult spaces safer and more inclusive. So get yourself a nice hot drink or cold drink, settle back, relax and enjoy. For context, I just want to share that I filmed this video mid-May. There is also a brief mention of SA, but I will give a trigger warning. In the first couple of minutes, I mention disordered eating as well, if you want to skip the first few minutes. So just to let you know from the beginning. So it is a beautiful day here in the woods. I'm here for a walk with Coco, and we're going to have a little chat, and it's going to be really informal, really casual. I don't have anything written down or anything planned. It's all in my head. So let's just see how this comes out. I want to sort of muse and kind of discuss some areas of conversation that have been coming up for me recently. I feel that maybe I've been having a little bit of a spiritual and personal kind of crisis point, but not in kind of like a mental health way. I mean, mental health is always something to consider for me. It's always on the table, but what I mean more is like things in terms of belief and paradigms and cosmologies and things like that. So you might have seen I made a video recently addressing the recent anti-trans ruling in the UK, discussing points brought up by Isha, the activist witch, and Raven on their channel, leaning into those conversations. I also created a video a couple of years ago about the divine feminine and the problem that I feel is there. And I think that I was sort of hitting on something that was sort of at the tip of the iceberg somewhat. And I feel like now maybe I'm getting a little bit beneath the surface and understanding a little bit more about the insidiousness of the patriarchy and how I have a problem with it and the ways in which it is present in my spiritual occult life as well as my personal life, and what I'm not happy with really. And I started sort of thinking like divine feminine wise, yes, I'm femme presenting. I've always identified as a cisgendered heterosexual woman. I have given birth to 2 children. So I suppose from a patriarchal standpoint, I've done my duty or whatever, but I'm not happy with that. Like, I'm not happy to be kind of categorized in that way. I feel like it's obviously enriched my life in many ways. It's also, brought challenges to my life. It's healed many things. I had body image issues that, are still present, but I had eating disorders and things. But having children, learning to nourish my body, like I've worked through things, and giving birth to children has really supported with that, because I started to see my body as something really sacred that was able to bring life into the world. And that's really beautiful. But that's not all of me, and that doesn't define me. And whilst I still feel like I'm identifying in a femme presenting way, I still feel like I'm wearing makeup. I feel like all this time, maybe some of it, is performative in a way, like when you're growing up to get attention from men. But I wanted friends, but found that I was pitted against women actually by the patriarchy, and I didn't like that. And actually some of the most sacred friendships were way deeper than that and went so much beyond that. And I think I'm just starting to kind of pull apart everything, dissect everything, and sort of try to understand things. And it's just been kind of wild, because starting to think about the practices that I do, the things that I believe in, the things that I'm researching more. Okay, so Western esotericism and a lot of the things that come from the Golden Dawn, that's made the backbone of my practice, because I first came to Wicca when I was 11. And so I was learning those practices which have their root in the Golden Dawn, essentially. Those things directly come from that Western esotericism and are coded by the patriarchy for the most part. And even thinking about Crowley's ideas of the aeons, and starting with Isis and that matriarchal period, and then moving into that sort of more pagan, the aeon of Osiris and the sacrificial aspects and that sort of fear behind it, and the patriarchy, but then also then leading into the aeon of Horus and where we are now. And I feel like there's just something that's just been missed out completely, because I've been thinking about the divine feminine from a perspective of, okay, well, if you've got the divine feminine, then you have the divine masculine in Hermetic texts. But feeling like those principles on a polarity of gender in those Hermetic texts, so the Qabalian more recently, but then the Emerald Tablet and the Corpus Hermeticum, those principles, that principle of gender that is not specific to sex, but utilises those words that are so gendered in our society today. I believe that, when they probably were received as teachings, they were perceived in that way as well. But then throughout ancient history, we have examples of there being a non-binary divine. There are examples in ancient history of the cult of Sybil and Attis, for instance, and the Gali, and those priestesses, they would not have identified as trans or non-binary in that time, but those are examples of there being a non-binary and it being divine in its nature. And I feel like maybe there's just been a suppression of what is in between and what is not one or the other, because my understanding of a spectrum anyway is that there's a lot of grey in between. It's not just black and white. We're always talking witchcraft, and we're always talking within these circles and groups about nuances in belief and how there should be room for that. So why in Hermeticism is the polarity of gender either one or the other? I don't believe it is so. I don't believe it just acts like that, and maybe many people believe that too. I would hope so. I just feel like maybe there's been a suppression of what is between, what is the in-between, what is the liminal, and what is the grey there, because there's this fascination of the divine feminine in society today. And yeah, I too am fascinated by that, especially because I feel like I've worked with a lot of dark goddesses in my practice. But let me tell you something, each and every one of those deities have appeared to me as a divine androgynous figure, a figure without gender. It's pre-gendered. I still utilise the label of dark goddess, and I've started to question that because I receive downloads from Lilith and the Morrigan and perceive them as animals, spirits, smoke sometimes, insects, and both masculine presenting, femme presenting, but also then in between something just far too primordial to even conceive. And that primordialness is absolutely not characterized by any ability to bring a child into the world. I'm so sick of being put into a box where that's my worth and that defines me. So now that I've had children, I'm a mum, and in this position, very privileged position that I'm in, so cis het presenting woman who's married, has 2 children, I'm supposed to be perceived in this privileged way by the patriarchy. I think I've received a lot of disrespect from men in my life, but also some women as well, people that I know. But generally, yeah, I suppose to the wider society, I must be viewed with that privilege, but it doesn't feel like anything good. It feels really, really sick and gross, and I've had enough of it. I also feel like just the terms, even though we talk about the terms masculine and feminine as not being gendered, the terms are gendered. So that's the meaning we ascribe to them. So we can say, oh, there's a divine feminine energy, a divine feminine principle here at play, but it's not gendered. It's not gendered specific because everyone has this within them. But it just feels completely flawed because the word itself is gendered in the meaning. So we need maybe different terms. I don't know. And I was thinking, could there be a divine liminal or something? I mean, I'm sure there's a better way to talk about this. I'm sure that there's a more sensitive way to talk about this and a more appropriate way to talk about this, because I'm not someone who understands everybody's situation and everybody's experience, especially because, I'm presenting in this way that is in this privileged body and world where I'm passing, I guess. But I'm starting to question everything, really, about myself personally as well, and things that just don't align and don't feel good for me. I think that that's where I've come to with it. How do we appreciate the power of the divine feminine in an inclusive way? And how do we appreciate the power of the divine masculine in an inclusive way? And how do we embrace in between? And how do we create space for other that is just as profoundly beautiful and divine? Because when you think about in Gnosticism, it was believed that Adam was a divine androgyne. It was pre-gendered. God on earth, but pre-gendered. Obviously, several creation stories, but either Eve was made from the rib of Adam or created another life form from the mud that was Lilith. And then also, how do I go about kind of honouring the sacredness of my body that is a female body, and appreciate the sacredness of my womb? How do I appreciate that in a way that is inclusive and that honours everything else as well, that doesn't exclude? Because whilst I believe that bringing life into the world is sacred. And obviously there's a survival mechanism to it as well, of course. And I suppose that's what it's centered on. But there's so much more to me and to my energy and to my spirit and to my soul than just that. But then I really do believe that embodiment practices are really powerful, and things like womb healing, yoni healing, etc. have been extremely powerful for me. And so I'm putting it out there as a question, really, and wondering how we can make these spaces, practices, make our language safer and more inclusive. And I'm sure that, some people will have some thoughts on this, and I would welcome that, I guess another part of it is how we all appreciate one another, no matter how we identify, as sacred, and start seeing beyond how we present or how we identify, but, appreciating again that everyone has a right to identify however they wish, however they choose. And then going back to the ruling, there are so many women who believe that this is beneficial for feminism. And I just can't understand that they would think that. They see that finally they're being prioritized as important, but really it's not. It's the patriarchy trying to create separation and division and make the gap larger, in a sense, so that there is even more of a gap between the patriarchy. So there is even more of a definition of patriarchy, so that the white cis het men are raised above, higher, and the women are lower, and then everyone else is lower still. I don't know what the answer could be, because I feel like there are a number of very intelligent women who are feminists who believe that this is powerful for them, because they're being able to uplift their voice and assert the rights for their sex, but not realizing that that is oppression to other women. That is oppressing other women, as well as a lot of other people as well. How can it be uplifting if it's something that's oppressing others who are not fitting into your definition, is my question. If you think something is uplifting and supporting, why does it have to do so at a cost and expense to somebody else and someone else's life and someone else's freedom to be and to live in this world? Because that's what's happening so quickly after that ruling. Just the horrific implications. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I just can't believe that we're in this place right now. We're in 2025. We're supposed to be living in this world that's, free and liberal, and we're all equal. It's just Animal Farm. It's just, some are more equal than others. And it does come down to power and money and being white and cis and het and male. But I feel like we've just missed something massive here, because the divine is pre-gendered. The divine is just a whole oneness of love. That's how I see the divine. That's how I feel it. And we then have ascribed the gender. And yes, there are different energies. You can talk about, I guess the word passive just has negative connotations, but you can talk about receptivity, talk about the Qabalah, that severity, being able to hold what is there from the creation or whatever, the cutting, that Saturnian cutting, and, limitations of the feminine or the left, being able to then contain what's been created on the right. You can talk about these principles, but at the end of the day, all of those are one anyway when you get to the top of the tree. I really think, Jack Chanek, I talked about his book before. I really like his book on Qabalah, because I think that he's a great person to talk about it, being in the LGBTQIA+ community, but being able to kind of break it down in a way that is very inclusive. It was really lovely, because a lot of other texts are very gendered and gender specific. And I guess I think we're forgetting such a lot, because also when you think about it, the tarot, obviously it has origins of being a playing card deck and such, but when you think about the tarot from the Golden Dawn, and then the Rider-Waite-Smith that came from that, and the Thoth, etc., you have the World card and the Rider-Waite-Smith, and the World card is known to be a hermaphrodite character. And I apologize if that word is in any way not a suitable word to utilize, but in that way, non-gender specific. It is meant to be the all, the universe, it's often renamed as. And so I come back to that, there are examples of it there, but we just miss it in the world, and then we repackage things to sell stuff, which is why we've got so much viral content on, I don't watch TikTok, but I know it's there, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, about being in your divine feminine. And then even the really, really Christian indoctrinated content about how being in your divine feminine means cooking, wearing beautiful clothes and beautiful makeup all day long while your husband works. And it makes me feel like I'm gonna chuck up. But I appreciate it if people want that, if that's the lifestyle you want, but I would be surprised if that's what you want forever.
honestly. I appreciate, like, I'm coming at this from a privileged place, so, you know, I'm saying things that potentially other people are not able to say. I also think, you know, my perspective is limited, my knowledge is limited, so I'm learning, you know. But I feel like I'm just so sick of being put in this box, and I'm not defined by the fact that I'm a mum, as beautiful as it is. I'm not being defined and objectified. I mean, it happens every day, of course, like that objectification. I feel it, but like I want to lean into relationships and friendships that are about more than that are like about a meeting of minds or a meeting of souls. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm so sick of that whole patriarchal thing. And going back to the video I made a few years ago, like why it was the tip of the iceberg is because I was getting at like women pitted against one another, but then the women also fighting one another, and why we can't like just uplift other women. Although I've not always understood this or known how I feel about this, and not talked about this, not had knowledge or the contextual information to kind of ground in any of these ideas in the way that I have now. I've always known that I wanted to uplift other women, as in not tear other women down. You know, look at my shadow if I feel threatened by other women, those kinds of things. Do the work on myself if I feel envious or like threatened by another woman, like doing that work on myself, working not to project stuff onto other women, that stuff, not holding other women back, you know, not pushing women down. Like, I've definitely experienced that in the workplace a lot, and I've experienced that from friends. You know, I've been excluded from things by friends. It's just insidious. I think like I never wanted to do that, and I understood that from quite a young age. I feel like the way that women are meant to bounce back from pregnancy, they're meant to look a certain way, dress a certain way, always the makeup thing. Okay, so I'm wearing makeup now, I know, but I like to wear makeup, I do. But when it comes to like, okay, so job interviews or work situations, work meetings, I actually feel now that if I don't put makeup on, I don't look put together. And I know like I have bags and stuff, like I've obviously got wrinkles now. I'm quite pale, so, and I've always had like dark circles under my eyes. I've always had tear troughs since I was young, but I look tired, I look haggard, I look exhausted, because I am. But I feel like if I show up like that, I don't look professional, and I hate that. Like, what is that? I remember maybe like 10 years ago, there was a story in the news, like a woman was fired for not wearing stilettos. Ugh, like it's just so gross.
Trigger warning here, I'm just about to mention experiences of SA, so if you feel that you do not wish to hear this, then please do skip ahead to the timestamp 1728.
And the sexual objectification, the sexual harassment I've received in workplaces as well, and assault as well by someone I worked with. I was assaulted in London, and I think it's all for the benefit of the patriarchy. So then, you know, this whole leaving people behind in the dust in this kind of very Margaret Thatcher way. Yeah, letting the door hit people on, you know, slamming the door behind you as you climb the ladder kind of thing. That sort of idea that a lot of women do. I do think I'm not interested in that, but also I'm not interested in uplifting this ideal of what a woman, feminine, divine feminine should be at the expense of someone else, because then they can't live as they are, and how they identify it just is so sick and wrong. Why? So then, speaking from the context of the divine feminine rising, and that I spoke about the wrath of the dark goddess, about the horrors and injustices and that is that divine mother, matriarchal figure rising up to, you know, condemn the kind of ways in which we're living today, the way we're treating the earth, the way we're treating other human beings. But even though that might be a motherly function, anybody can be a mother. It's not just about giving birth to a child to be a mother. I think being able to birth a child doesn't mean that someone's fit to be a mother. So equally, mothers don't necessarily have to be women. It's not necessarily about the making of children to be a mother, to be a good mother, to be a father,
to be a guardian or a parent.
And if we can understand it there, then why can't we apply it in other ways as well? I do want to say thank you for listening. I do want to say thank you for appreciating my kind of lack of knowledge and understanding, and just going with me on this, like where I'm at and what I'm feeling and like thinking about, and how it's just sitting wrong with me. Because I did want to say, because I'm so heavily invested in some practices from Western esotericism, such as the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, the Qabalistic Cross, these practices are important to me, but they're rooted in something that's really quite patriarchal. But it's examining it further. The liminal is there within it. It's just suppressed quite a lot. And yes, like Aleister Crowley may have been very sexist, but I'm able to read some of his work. I do think that there has been quite a lot of misogyny within occult spaces and perpetuated by people like Crowley. And I feel like there's been some aspects of the divine that have been suppressed purposefully, right? I feel like there are massive, massive holes in it. I'm not qualified to say exactly what these are or like how we fix it. It's just me coming in to say like, these are the problems I'm having because I practice in this way. I work with energy. I strengthen my light body, but there's a divinity within me that goes far beyond my and pushing out babies. And there's a divinity within you, within everyone. And I think it just goes so much further beyond like our genitals, please. And so much further beyond like whether or not we can give birth to children, because many people born as women are unable to conceive just as many men at birth are unable to procreate. So why? Why are we then suppressing people who choose to identify in a way that they weren't characterized at birth? Like, that is what I'm here to talk about. And I really think, I hope, and I'm so grateful if Isha's watching, and I feel like there will be some things that they can add to this conversation and make this conversation better, more well-rounded. And there are some other people as well that I hope will join in. And, you know, I'm here to learn. I'm not here to preach, but I do think we need to make spaces safer within occult groups, within occult spaces. You know, people may identify as witches or pagans and disagree. They can do what they want, but I disagree with that and I don't want to be associated with those people. You know, there are people who are transphobic, who are in occult spaces and in pagan circles and in witchcraft spaces. They are going to do what they're going to do, but that's why I'm talking. That's why I'm taking up space now, because even though I'm not part of the community as such, I am not okay with the status quo. So I'm putting that out there, and hopefully there'll be more to speak about in general, like how we make these spaces safer for everybody and how we lift up the voices of people who are marginalized and minority, people who are not safe, like how we make life safer for them. The way that we're going is not making life safer for them or any of us. So I'm pushing back. There is another aspect of the divine feminine that is really prevalent in occult pagan spaces and understood to be ancient, and that is Maiden Mother Crone, which has so many problems to it. And, you know, that derives out of a patriarchal place as well. That is basically from James Fraser's The Golden Bough.
This was later expanded upon by Robert Graves in The White Goddess.
It is essentially... Oh, hello. Oh, look. Hello. Had this little fella on me. Hello. How adorable. Right, we need to find you a home. I'm just going to put him down somewhere. Okay, so the little caterpillar is now safe in the undergrowth. I think for a very long time I've known this concept isn't exactly right. It doesn't feel like expansive enough for many deities, I don't believe. But also then like that missing sort of space, that matriarchal space, that queen space. But then also understanding like terms like lord and queen. Like, they're so gendered, but I like it when they're not gendered, you know, in tarot, like, just to make mention of that. But then, thinking about that, Isha did a video a couple of years ago now about that divine feminine problem being just rooted in patriarchal doctrine, and it's an insidious kind of patriarchal tool, really, for oppression and suppression.
I will say that since recording this, Isha and Raven at the Activist Witch channel did upload another video about the divine feminine, so I'll also link that. That's also really great to watch. And also with Llewellyn Con, there was a fantastic author named Ariana Serpentine. They presented a talk about their book, which is Sacred Gender, I believe it's called. So their talk was about rethinking binary approaches in magical systems, and it was really great for this topic. So I would also recommend that you watch that, so I will link that below.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a space in my practice or life. I mean, I suppose I have seasons and cycles, so I honour my seasons and cycles. I have a menstrual cycle, which I honour, and I do work with the moon. So I have a menstrual cycle, and I do track that, and I do work with the moon to support me tracking that, because obviously the moon has an impact on the earth with the tides, the seasons, and I often notice my menstrual cycle flowing. There is an amazing book by Demetra George, the astrologer, Mysteries of the Dark Moon, and that is a beautiful, beautiful book, and there may be some outdated language in there though, but it talks about you really being in sync with the moon and the natural state of your body when you are releasing, when you are bleeding at the dark moon, and then when you are ovulating around the full moon. And that's where I'm at the moment, and so I'm really, really pleased with that, because it's taken a lot to track that. I also understand that I was in a period of my life where I was looking to go out into the world and to discover and to create in that kind of maiden form, maiden, and then I guess I became a mother. My children are still quite young. My daughter is 10. By the time this goes live, she will be 10. She's 10 on the 22nd of May. My son is 7. I guess at some point then there'll be a sort of matriarchal phase, but it's very much coded, you know, a nuclear family setup, you know, in that way that like Disney and the patriarchy told you that lie that, you know, you as a little girl, you know, you do your best and you work hard and you always look really pretty in your dress and you're a very good girl and you get good grades, and then you go to university and you do your best and you get your grades, and then you settle down and you get married and you have your children and all of that stuff. And it's all just a massive lie anyway, because the economy is so messed up. There's no truth in any of it. Like, it doesn't matter if you get great grades at university, most people can't afford a house anyway. The whole system is set up for everybody to fail pretty much, apart from the super rich, which is also just disgraceful. Like I was saying before, we're living in this world where like all of these cultural mores, and there's this lie about us being free or whatever. We're not free at all. The super rich are free to go to space in their stupid blue suits. Such a ridiculous waste of resources when the planet is burning and children in Palestine are being... it's absolutely ludicrous to me. The whole principle of Maiden Mother Crone is so coded. And then the Crone, like this tool used in paganism, isn't it lovely? Because the Crone is honoured instead of being sort of like maligned as old in society. The Crone is honoured as being wise. But that's not what it is at all. It's just telling you where you fit in a box. Why does a woman who is older have nothing to offer but wisdom? There's a lot more to offer the world. There's so much to offer the world at every single phase.
The maiden does not only offer innocence, purity, and beauty. And for that matter, who says that to be of value, there has to be something to offer anyway? Yes, there are times for that, but surely we are divine in ourselves as human beings.
And maybe this is why Persephone came in, because it's like, I'm so sick of being in your box where half a year I'm down underneath with this lord, and then the other half of the year I come up and I prance around on the earth with my mother. I'm kind of sick of it, you know, like I feel like maybe there's that. Maybe it's like, actually just sick of it, mum, just sick of it. Not read all of the lore, but I know that there is a story where actually Persephone is kind of honoured as more important or having more honour than even Hades. Maybe it was that Hades wasn't there and she rules over it, but she's revered as really important in the underworld. Boxes, and I know humans, we like to put things in boxes because then we can understand things, but the boxes are so bloody limiting. They're not doing anything for us, frankly. Isha spoke about the Maiden Mother Crone principle and the problematic nature of it being so patriarchal and how it's just embedded with the misogyny and such in their video, but I'm just making mention of it here because it aligns with the divine feminine. Maybe the problem is just that we are massively overlooking that there's divinity in everything in between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and that also the principal nature of oneness is sacred, and that would include all of us. That would include everybody equal, whether or not we can give birth or, you know, make children. We are creating things all the time in our world. Why do we have to put people in these rigid boxes and limit people's abilities to live their lives and make places unsafe for people just so that we can say we're more important? That's basically what it is. So sick of it, so sick of it. I will also say that whilst I do believe Lilith is an amazing feminist icon, I also think that Lilith has been misappropriated and her story has been misappropriated in a very, very subtle way. And that is to say that, okay, so she will not lie beneath Adam, asserting that her divine femininity is just as powerful and important and as sacred as Adam, and then leaves the Garden of Eden, thus asserting her choice, okay, and her right to choose. Okay, but this does not in any way then put having a vagina above not having a vagina. It's Lilith's way of saying, I'm not conforming to your box. I will not be put in that box. So it's irrelevant. Lilith has worked with men and women and non-binary folks. Lilith would in no way discriminate against a person of any sex or gender or identity, for that matter. Like, it's inconsequential and irrelevant, other than the fact that Lilith rejected that from the patriarchy. Lilith rejected the patriarchy. Lilith rejected that box. That's the only relevance it has. And in this way, we can see that the divine feminine is in fact not the problem. It is patriarchy that is the problem. It is the patriarchy's subversion, perversion of the divine feminine and of the divine masculine, frankly, because there's just so much toxic masculinity thanks to the patriarchy. And patriarchy that is to blame for the suppression of anything, everything that is in between or other or liminal. And how do we get that back? I just hope that this has landed. If there are any questions, if I can clarify things, I will. I hope that I've been sensitive in my language. I'm here to learn, of course, so always willing to listen. If people have more sources to cite or more contextual information that they're able to share, that would be amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for listening and for being here and for being part of this community. It's really a privilege to be able to come on and just speak about witchcraft and the occult, and it's a privilege to be able to be a voice in the community. So I really thank you for allowing me to be a voice in the community. Do you know what I mean? For listening and for receiving. So thank you. If there's anything I can do to help any communities at all or any individuals, please reach out and I will do my best to be of service. So thank you again for being here. Stay well, stay safe. All my things are below, like Instagram and Patreon and all the other things. Look after yourselves. Be compassionate to others, because other people are going through lots right now. I'm sending you so much love and peace. So many blessings. Bye.